Last year, I called the Samsung Q990D the GOAT when it came to all-inclusive Dolby Atmos soundbar systems. I even said that until Samsung makes a substantial change to their Q series soundbars, I wasn't likely to review them because what would be the point? I mean, it's already the GOAT. It's not like my stance was going to keep Samsung from releasing another alphabet in their Q series of bars. 2025 ushers in the F bar, as in the Q990F. Unlike some of the previous updates, the F features some notable changes, specifically a new subwoofer design. But before I delve into the new subwoofer, let's go over what you get with Samsung's latest Dolby Atmos soundbar system. It's still an 11.1.4 Dolby Atmos setup comprising of a soundbar, a single wireless subwoofer, and 2 wireless surrounds. Like its predecessors, this new generation bar primarily benefits from minor software and voicing tweaks, specifically adjustments to its voice enhancements, as well as the addition of Eclipse Audio, an open source surround sound format co-developed by Samsung and Google to compete with Dolby. Eclipse was only announced this year, so there's not a great deal of content apart from maybe a brief demo animation here or there that showcases this tech. If and when content becomes available, though, the Q990F is compatible. And setting up the Q990F is no different than setting up last year's model despite the new subwoofer design. Like with any subwoofer, even one designed to complement a more mass-market soundbar, placement is key. Now, I recommend keeping the sub as close to the bar as possible for the most coherent sound top to bottom, which I know goes against where I typically place subwoofers towards the rear left corner of our room. In the rear left corner, this is where they often sound and measure their best. However, when I place the F's subwoofer towards the back of our room, sadly, I could hear aspects of a mix, specifically vocals, coming out of the sub, resulting in a disjointed experience. Now, when I placed the subwoofer along the front wall of our room, closer to the bar itself, this wasn't an issue. That said, this placement did result in a little bit of a sacrifice in some bass output. I tested the Samsung with the TCL QM7K as well as the newest TCL QM8K TV using a single HDMI cable between the two devices' HDMI ARC port, and I placed the sub just off to the left. Next, I set up the Atmos-enabled wireless surrounds on stands near the back of our room, angled inward so that the front-facing drivers pointed, more or less towards the edges of our sofa. Like with previous generation bars, the 990F surrounds can be moved to the front of the room in what Samsung calls front speaker mode. I tested this feature, it works, just don't expect this to transform the F into a true 2-channel setup. The 990F also features a setting called Private Rear, which directs all sound to come through the rear channels, effectively bypassing the main bar and subwoofer altogether. Now, ideally, this setting is designed for late night or more private listening when you still want to hear what the actors on screen are saying without having to resort to subtitles or waking the neighbors. Once you have all of the speakers placed and connected to power, you'll want to connect the system to your home's network so that you can access all of the features of the bar through the SmartThings app. The 990F comes with a remote allowing you to bypass the app, although I think the app is far more intuitive and easy to use. Trust me when I say you're gonna want to use the app if you want to fine-tune the bar's performance. Making adjustments with the remote while relying on that tiny little calculator-style display on the bar is pretty tedious. The good news is the 990F doesn't require much adjustment. Like past Q-series bars, the 990F is still as plug-and-play as soundbars come. Of course, depending on your room or personal taste, you may need to adjust the subwoofer's volume to blend it seamlessly with the rest of the system, but overall, not much else requires adjustment. Sure, you can toggle between the 4 sound profiles, still no custom profile, mind you, and turn the voice enhancements on and off, but that's really about it. I mean, thanks to CEC or control over HDMI, once I had the bar set up, I controlled the system's volume using our Apple TV remote and left many of the Samsung's other settings completely alone. The F sounded pretty balanced in our room, straight out of the box. But if you want to play with the 990F's 4 sound modes, you have Standard, Surround, Game Pro, and Adaptive Sound to choose from. In Standard mode, the 990F plays back the incoming signal 1 for 1. So if you feed it a stereo or 2-channel signal, such as music, you will hear only the left and right channels from the main bar, plus bass from the sub. If you send it a 5.1 channel feed, you will only hear the left, right, center, surround, and sub channels from the system, and so on and so forth. If you want to hear all of the Samsung's 15 total channels, you need to place the bar in its surround, game, or adaptive sound modes. These modes effectively mix, or I guess remix, all incoming signals to take full advantage of the system's total number of channels, turning stereo into Atmos and even basic 5.1.2 Atmos into, well, 15-channel Dolby Atmos. And I would like to point out that if you tune the sound of the 990F beyond using its simple tone controls or toggling its bass or voice enhancements on or off, the standard sound profile is the only one that provides more granular control over the system's sound using EQ. Now, if you're looking for room correction, the 990F has SpaceFit Sound Pro, which analyzes the sound of the system and adjusts it in real time using microphones built into the bar. Now, SpaceFit can help improve the system's sound quality in various environments. However, unlike more complex room EQ solutions, say Dirac, the before and after results of SpaceFit are going to be a little bit more subtle than transformative. I preferred leaving the bar in its surround or adaptive sound mode, though, for all of my listening. After all, why not take advantage of all 15 channels? The biggest change in the 990F sound stems from its new sub. The new subwoofer has a smaller footprint and uses dual opposing 8-inch drivers compared to the previous gen's taller ported subwoofer. Samsung's marketing suggests that the new sub has a more linear bass response, which I can vouch for. The new sub produced more linear results in room compared to its predecessor, and my measurements showcase this. The new sub plays down to just below 30 Hz in room with a decent amount of headroom, though I found that when listening at higher volumes, I'm talking peaks cresting 90 to 95 dB, the sub's cabinet does creak and rattle under the strain of the woofers bottoming out. The previous generation sub would also bottom out at or near these volumes. However, its ported construction minimized the noises I found distracting. Like with anything, your mileage may vary based on your room size and listening habits. For best results, though, I do recommend keeping the in-room volume below about 90 dB, and you should be A-okay. Aside from that, I found the new subwoofer to be sonically superior to the older design, but I also prefer finesse over brute force when it comes to bass, and the new sub delivers on that front. Now, if you like bass that booms or, gives you that punch of air, then you may be happier with the older 990D sub. But if you want to hear, arguably, some of the more nuanced bass you're likely to experience from a mass-market sub $2,000 all-in-one soundbar system, look no further. As for the rest of the system, the overall tone of the 990F from around 100 Hz to 20 kHz is not all that different from the 990D, and my measurements confirm my subjective observation. In fact, in most situations, I'm not wholly convinced one could tell the difference between them with 100% accuracy 100% of the time. Samsung's active voice amplifier is very effective, and it's easy to see why. With this feature engaged, there is a notable spike in the upper mid-range and treble compared to when it is off, where the same frequencies run in better alignment with the rest of the system's Harman-esque response. Again, this boost definitely resulted in greater vocal presence and intelligibility, but it sometimes didn't sound natural. If you struggle with dialogue, active voice can be an effective tool. For me, the 990F was plenty intelligible on its own, so I actually left the feature off. While the 990F subwoofer is new, my biggest complaint about the 990F is that it's still largely the same system Samsung's been putting out for the past 3 or 4 years. I honestly like the new sub, and I think many of you will appreciate the smaller format, even though it can creak and rattle when you push it. I'm surprised that Samsung didn't give the entire system a facelift, though, considering it went to the trouble of designing a whole new sub, which required all new molds. Since the rest of the F system is largely unchanged, if not identical, I would have liked to see Samsung offer the Q990D owners the option to swap out their existing sub with the new one from the 990F, or, I don't know, perhaps a firmware update to let customers pair the new sub with their old and end up with an 11.2.4 Atmos setup in the end. So once again, I implore Samsung to go further and do more with their next Q series iteration. At roughly $1,500, the Q990F remains a solid value among its peers. Now, compared to the Sony Bravia Theater Quad, the 990F is every bit as cinematic and nearly as enveloping as the Sony for roughly half the cost. Remember, the Sony SW-5 subwoofer is sold separately and is an absolute must to get the most out of the Quad system. Where Sony has the advantage, though, is it's going to produce a more traditional, discrete home theater experience, mainly due to the fact that it, relies on 4 identical speaker panels as opposed to a traditional bar like the 990F. This makes the Sony the hands-down winner if you're looking for an easy-to-use, all-in-one soundbar-like setup that can also deliver a more convincing 2-channel experience. But again, you have to be willing to spend more to get it. Sonos has become a bit more competitive with its pricing lately, bringing its more premium, immersive systems within reach of customers who may be on the fence about whether to buy Sonos or Samsung. While the new Arc Ultra, Sub-Gen 4, and 2 Era 300s are still more expensive, the added investment is worth it. Overall, I prefer the Sonos tuning and resulting sound, and even though it doesn't have as many channels as the 990F, you wouldn't know it. When it comes to 2-channel listening, the Sonos system is equally as flexible as the Samsung, just with far better results. As for the subwoofers, the Gen 4 from Sonos outperforms the 990F's new sub, handling spirited listening better and playing deeper in direct comparison. But the real question is whether existing Q990D owners need to upgrade to the 990F, and the quick answer is no. I don't believe the changes to the F are enough for existing D owners to ditch their systems. You can hit rewind for the specifics on how these two systems differ, but for now, if you don't already own a 990D and you're on the market for your first soundbar system, by all means, scoop up the newer 990F. You will not be sorry, especially if the two systems are priced the same, which, as of this recording, they were. Now, at some point, though, I'm guessing Samsung will start discounting the 990D, which is going to make the D an even bigger value in 2025. In that case, get the 990D while you still can. You'll get essentially the same performance for less, further cementing the 990D and not the Q990F as the GOAT. So that's it. That's my take on Samsung's new Q990F. I know, I said I wouldn't review another Q series soundbar unless they made some changes, and what do you know? They made some changes. But did they make enough? Sound off in the comments below. In the meantime, remember guys, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video. Enjoy the rest of your day, and see you on the next one. Bye.